Looking back at this, it's actually a well-written story with how far Michael is willing to go out of his way to help someone, even if it was a lady stranded from a broken-down car and assisting her to her new army post. This is where we see our first look at Michael's tendency of being a ladies' man, and something that becomes somewhat of a theme throughout the rest of the series' run. The story is of a military officer in Ernest Ladd dying under mysterious circumstances after he uncovers the repainting of missile shells to look like armor-piercing rounds from tactical nuclear weapons that were being sold to some unfriendly nations that were willing to pay top dollar for it. We get to see how competent Michael is as an investigator with how he sneaks into the munitions post and discovering that tactical nuclear weapons are being disguised as armor-piercing weapons, and to earlier with how resourceful he is in posing as a sandwich vendor in order to obtain Ernest Ladd's accident report. We get to see how resilient KITT is to dodging fire and taking a hit when he goes into the ordnance range whilst a shooting drill is carried out. It's the first time we get to see Patricia McPherson as Dr. Bonnie Barstow, and she's wasted in this episode as she's just in for one scene just to repair KITT's alpha circuit after he had towed Robin Ladd's car from earlier, which had affected numerous complex systems. There's not much of a change of the dynamic between Michael and Devon as they're butting heads, and similar thing can be said between Michael and KITT, with the Trans Am questioning most of his partner's various motives and decisions. He is slowly developing a personality, but he's still very childlike and not as quick-witted as he later becomes in the season. But he does have a few good moments where he doesn't let up on Michael for the towing incident. The reveal of General Duncton as the heel mastermind is very subtle, as the writers had kept his status well hidden until the shooting practice on the ordnance field, where he orders the shooting to fire on KITT. Everyone turned in a decent performance, especially with Devon Erickson as Robin Ladd, a complete and total sweetheart that was competent in her role as a returning lieutenant to a base she grew up on. David is good as Michael. Now, some may think Daniel's performance as KITT would have been somewhat monotone and lifeless. Considering the AI was still growing as a personality, it needs to be reflected in the vocal delivery. As mentioned in the writing, Patricia was just wasted in her one scene as Bonnie with little to nothing to do. She would have more to do as the series progressed. Alan Oppenheimer, who some of you may know better as the voice of Skeletor from Filmation's animated series of He-Man in 1983, does a stellar job of fooling the characters and the audience of his involvement in the story as the mastermind of the weapons being sold. He comes across as caring and compassionate, but it's once you see the heel turn that you see the true nature of his character. Oppenheimer would return in Season 3's Custom-Made Killer. Stu Phillips really put out a score that complemented the location and the theme of the episode with the Army Brass score. Particularly as KITT is entering the Army post for the first time, and the Knight Rider theme has a more militaristic feel to it, so that was good. The biggest discrepancies are with KITT specifically. There are shots of the dash where the red flashing light for the voice box is replaced with a white sticker that just says Knight 2000 when there are close-up shots of his voice box. There is some inconsistency when Pursuit is highlighted, because there are two shots where one is accented in purple and then another in white. It's not a major discrepancy, but again, some consistency would have been appreciated. For the first episode after the pilot that aired on October 1, 1982, this had a decent payoff which showed very competent writing, good performances and character development between the two principal stars in Michael and KITT. There was no turbo boost, but that would get rectified in the next episode. Good night from the night.